from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to hour number one of the program. It's our Tuesday night edition of the program. The phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. I am your liberty-loving Latino amigo, and I really am happy to be here with you guys tonight. We're broadcasting live and national to all over the place. So hopefully you'll join in the conversation. I want to get into a couple of things because bang, bang, right? There's been some shots fired. Shots were fired into Kamala Harris's, and as you know on this program, she's affectionately known as Que Mala Eres, which means how bad you are in Spanish. And Que Mala Eres has a campaign office, a DNC office actually, that doubles as her campaign office in Arizona. And there were shots fired into it last night. The police are investigating. Here's the story. Just over a week after the attempted assassination on Donald Trump, second time around, now this happens to Que Mala Eres. Damage from several bullets fired sometime after midnight on Monday were discovered at the Democrat National Committee campaign office near Southern Avenue and Priest Drive in Tempe, Arizona. And we have a report on that. Listen to this.
Police in Tempe investigating what appears to be shots fired at a Democratic Party campaign office. Bullet holes here in the glass entryway. The office is in a shopping center near Priest and Southern. Fortunately, no one was inside at the time. It's being investigated as a property damage crime, and the Mesa Forensic Unit is assisting.
Now, nobody was inside the office building during the attack, which happened in the overnight hours, but officials are concerned about the safety of those that work there. Now, again, you know, I'm a cynic, a little bit of a cynic, so I look at this stuff and I think, hold on a second. If nobody was there, why are you concerned with safety, right? I mean, it already happened. What you want to do is make sure that you make sure people are safe moving forward. And maybe that's what they meant, but the way it was written, it just seems so weird. Anyway, and that, again, that was a quote I was reading from Public Information Officer Sergeant Ryan Cook. Bottom line for me here is, this is likely, in my opinion, some sort of copycat, some sort of, I don't think anybody was trying to hurt anybody if you go there in the middle of the night when you know nobody's there, right? So that's more like intimidation or a threat or some sort of political message where you want to send the message that, you know, hey, we're shooting at both candidates, right? Because, you know, I've spent the last, I don't know, since July 13th telling everybody, listen, if Trump's such a threat to democracy, why aren't they shooting at Harris? I'm not asking anybody to shoot at Harris. Que mala eres. I'm asking people to think logically for a second and think about why they're trying to kill El Trompito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th president of these United States. Why are they trying to kill him and not her? So maybe this is an attempt at that. Maybe this is sour grapes on somebody's behalf where they're like, I don't like Que mala eres. Could be. Why wait till now after they've already done this to Trump? I would think it's somewhat inspired by that. Listen, I don't put a lot of things past a lot of people. You know, when Trump had a bullet whiz by his ear on video and take a little piece of his ear off, graze him on the side of the head there, people said this was staged. On both sides. On both sides of the aisle, I've heard people say it was staged. It didn't look staged to me in the least. But anyway, people said it was staged. This is something that looks a lot more staged. You know, if I'm on video and you see me getting attacked, likely not as staged as it is if I show up and I go, hey, look, last night somebody broke into my car. We don't know what happened last night. We just know what we have, you know, in the morning. Some broken glass, a car that was broken into, or in this case, some broken glass, some windows that were shot up. Now, this place was also shot up about a month ago with a BB gun that chipped the windows. So I don't know the story here, and I don't know enough to speculate. But reading the tea leaves and having been around politics for the last 2 decades, I can tell you this. It doesn't seem like they were trying to hurt anybody. It seems like they were trying to send a message. You know, kind of like back when they were threatening and intimidating people of color by throwing a brick through their window or lighting a burning cross in front of their house. They didn't want to hurt these people, or they would have. They wanted to threaten and intimidate and terrorize. And I think that's the goal. In this case, I would bet this is somebody that is looking to get some attention, some traction onto Harris. I got a phone call today from, I have a friend. I don't want to call her a leftist, but she is a progressive left-leaning person. She's an attorney. She's been an attorney for Black Lives Matter. I've known her for close to 30 years. She's represented me in the past as well. And she and I remain friends. And she called me and we were talking. And I always get an interesting take from her. And part of what we were talking about was, you know, just the election and all that stuff. And it's never lost on me how people view this election. And she said to me, she said, how's the show going? And I said, oh, it's going well. You know, I said, I just feel like it's not September 24th. There's usually so much more going on in the news than we have now. And while, yeah, there was this big conflict with Hezbollah yesterday and over the weekend, there are things happening, but you wouldn't, if you looked at the headlines, you wouldn't think that we're, I don't know, what is it, 40 days or 40 some odd days away from Election Day. And she said, yeah. She said, but that's because there's never been a candidate like Trump with a mind like the one he has. And I was about to say, wow, you're saying something nice about Trump. And she said, and I don't mean that in a nice way. And I thought, okay, I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. And she said, this is a man that, whether it's like you would like to think, genius, marketing genius, his ability to communicate effectively, or what I know it is what she tells me, the fact that he's just so egocentric and narcissistic that he has to suck up all the air in the room. If everybody's not talking about him, he's not satisfied. And you know, she goes on this little, not tirade, but, you know, she gave her thought. And you know, of course, I allowed her to say what she had to say before. And I said, well, did you ever stop and think that maybe Trump does know what he's talking about and that he's really good at saying certain things to make sure he's a few steps ahead of the media that's constantly baiting him? And she was like, yeah, any candidate other than Trump, I might believe that. She said, but I just don't believe it. She has a personal animus against Trump, like so many people do. But the reality is, she made an excellent point. Trump sucks the energy out of the room. The oxygen out of the room goes to him. He is the story every single time. He is the show. And that is why I would suspect the Harris campaign is doing whatever they can do. Whether it's kind of trailing him on his campaign stops, they go here, they go there. He goes here, they go there, right? Or this latest attempt to break some windows. Maybe they need to move the needle in Arizona a little bit. I would suspect they do. Why? Because the other day we read that in Arizona, Trump was doing really well with Hispanics. Despite Harris having a lead on Hispanics, I don't think anybody's making the case here that, at least I'm not. I'm never going to make the case that Democrats are going to be, they're going to lose their monopoly on the African-American vote or the Hispanic vote. I'm not saying that at all. Or the woman vote, if you will, right? The female vote. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is Trump is a juggernaut in cutting into their margin, reducing their margin, and greatly boosting his margin in those same demographics, right? You're seeing black men really come over to Trump. Now you're seeing black women come over to Trump. And it doesn't stop there. It keeps going. So that's the point I'm making. And in Arizona in particular, lots of Hispanics are flocking over to Trump. So he's cutting into their margins. He's cutting into their lead. That sounds good to me. Anyway, I think that's might be part of the reason why we saw these gunshots happening outside of Kamala Harris's campaign office. Now, the United States Senate has approved this bill that I was talking about the other night, that the House approved unanimously. They also approved it unanimously. And I'm supposing it's going to go into effect, the enhanced funding and enhanced security protocols, giving both Harris and Trump and future presidential candidates the same protection, I think a 15-member team, that Biden has, the sitting president. So now these two major candidates are going to have the same protection. How quickly that now is, I don't have all the details. I'll take another look at the stuff that came out, and I'll let you know. But that's what's going on there. Now, yesterday, there was a hearing on Capitol Hill, and Mandy Gunasekara, she was the chief of staff at the EPA during the Trump years. She testified before Congress, and we come back. I want you to hear a little bit of what she had to say about 2025, Project 2025, when she was asked that by Jamie Raskin. So keep it locked right here. It's Rich Valdez. We're coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
United States Environmental Protection Agency during the Trump years. And she was on Capitol Hill yesterday at a hearing, and she was asked a question, a misleading question, I might add, by ranking member Jamie Raskin. And you know Raskin, his dad was heavily involved in the communist movement. And the question circled around her involvement in scholarly work with the Heritage Foundation in a project they've done that is now very popularly known as Project 2025. And given that she was a Trump administration official, he tried to, make an equation there. And I think he was in for an interesting surprise when he tried to set up this Southern Belle veteran and environmental attorney and energy strategist. Check this out.
Ranking Member Raskin, you reiterated and have created a boogeyman that just isn't there. I did author the EPA chapter on Project 2025, but in the course of that, I did not work with President Trump, with any of the people who work for him directly or his campaign. And it is very misleading to suggest that there's any coordination there, because I can personally tell you it did not happen. And I am not vying for a position in the next administration. I've actually left D.C. and I've moved to a small town in Mississippi where I interact every day with people who live outside this bubble of gaslighting and misleading. And they actually are dealing with the consequences caused by policy decisions of this administration that isn't defined by progress, but defined by creating unnecessary hardship. I understand why it's hard to think about the political realm prior to President Trump, but the Heritage Foundation has been very involved in pushing forward conservative policies for quite a while. And the Mandate for Leadership, the latest iteration, it's the 9th edition. This is a project that has been put out every few years since 1981. So it's been around for quite some time, and again, is more committed to representing the position of the broader conservative movement than any one candidate or person.
Again, that's Mandy Gunasekara. She is an environmental attorney, former chief of staff at the EPA during the Trump years. She was a visiting fellow at the Heritage Foundation. She is. She's also the author of Y'all Fired, and I want to welcome her to the show. Mandy Gunasekara, welcome.
Thanks, Rich. Really great to be with you.
Likewise. So you held your own, and you did phenomenally well with the folks in the swamp, and this is in many ways what you write about in your book, right? This constant back and forth, and you mentioned it even in your comments that you've left the den of vipers in many ways, and went to a small town, which I think is a dream for a lot of people, especially in my part of town here in New York. But tell us about some of what you dealt with, and what inspired you to write the book.
Yeah, so, when I went to EPA, I had worked in D.C., I'd worked in the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate. And I'll tell you the biggest difference when I left the legislative branch and walked into the executive branch was being met front and center every day with the deep state, But the difference is when you work in the House and the Senate, you walk into a room, you know where people stand. You know who's a Democrat, who's a Republican, which staff is with which relative member, and typically where they're going to be coming at you from one policy direction or another. When you walk into the administrative state, you'll walk into a room and you have no idea who's actually helping you, who's working to undermine you, and who is working to make your life a living hell. And that's what I ran into on day one in the Trump administration. And it's because of people who are not civil servants. They are activists that unless you align with their progressive view of the world, they will undermine the work, regardless of the fact that it's a directive from the President of the United States, duly elected by the people. They will undermine your work. But in the Trump administration, the deep state went a step further, and they would try to humiliate and discredit and ruin the reputations of the politicals who are working in that administration. And one of the examples that I highlight, it's front and center in the book, is when I went to represent the president at the United Nations climate conference after we had withdrawn from the Paris Climate Accord, disastrous deal. Once we withdrew from that, he had tasked a handful of us to keep the conversation going and try to renegotiate for something better. Well, when I went, the State Department was in charge of the logistics. And mind you, Rich, I'd been on these type of trips before. I never thought for a second that I would have to worry about the type of hotel or the location of where I would be staying when I'm going on behalf of the U.S. delegation for a very serious mission. And I ended up lodged at a sex hotel 30 minutes outside of where the conference actually was, which was a very clear form of harassment and degrading from the deep state. And that's just one example. There's many, many more, but
Mandy, I just want to chime in real quick here. This is
Yeah.
fascinating to me. I spent a little bit of time working in state government, and whenever I've told my stories about this, people look at me like I've got four heads. But what you're saying is, here you are, an attorney and chief of staff at the EPA, and you're going on this diplomatic mission on behalf of the president representing the United States of America, and the people that booked your travel somehow, I guess, weren't on board with this and decided to not prank you, but make your life difficult. And put you in a less desirable, unbecoming hotel.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what happened. And of the entire delegation, it was me and my one other EPA colleague, another younger professional woman. We were the only two that out of the entire delegation ended up at this one hotel. And when we raised it to the logistical folks, they kind of snickered and wanted to dismiss it. But it did happen.
Yeah, I don't doubt it for a second. Folks, we're on with Mandy Gunasekara, former Trump EPA chief of staff and the author of Y'all Fired. We're going to learn more about what's in the book and her time there as soon as we come back. Don't go anywhere. It's me, Rich Valdez, coming right back with our guest, Mandy Gunasekara.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Do you think that sex work ought to be decriminalized?
I think so. I do. When you're talking about consenting adults, I think that, yes, we should really consider that we can't criminalize consensual behavior as long as no one is being harmed. But at the point that anyone's being harmed or exploited, then I think we have to understand that's a different matter.
So maybe, that's Kamala Harris back in 2019, maybe Kamala Harris, who I like to call her, maybe it was some of her folks that were booking the rooms for Mandy Gunasekara and her colleague, who were at the meeting for the Paris Climate Accords, where they decided to book her at a different hotel than everybody else, one that specialized in sex work. Now, one could think they were trying to send a hidden message, a prank, or just be snide, but maybe they were trying to endanger her, right? You really never know. And before I bring our guest back, I just want to share a thought with you guys. In my time in government, people didn't know that I worked and I was appointed by a Republican governor. And I was outed when they saw a picture of me and the governor at the Christmas party. And soon after that, everything started to change. I had a special situation with my travel class at work where I was able to expense mileage from different office locations that my department had, where they changed it and said, you have to come into the state capitol every day, and then from there, go back out to whichever part of the state, which added, hours and hours to my day and eliminated my ability to get any reimbursement on mileage on my vehicle. And then they said, oh, and it was our mistake, but you're going to have to pay us back anything that we've reimbursed you for the last 18 months. And they sent me a bill for something like $6,000. And I was like, you're out of your mind. I didn't make the mistake. This stuff was signed by the treasurer of the state of New Jersey, plus the department head. That's on you, not on me. And honestly, this happened back in 2009, and I'm still fighting it. Now, these little insignificant things are like death by 1,000 cuts. It's very similar in my mind to what Mandy's talking about when they book her hotel and they put her in the sex worker hotel. Mandy Gunasekara, welcome back.
Yeah, Rich, great to be with you again.
And, these things, these little micro attacks that they do on people, this is what the deep state specializes in. So they never get caught and their hands are never dirty. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And they have a talent, unfortunately, and it's how to use the administrative state to make the lives of people they disagree with really difficult. It sounds like you've been on the receiving end of some very similar harassment, but it also shows the depth of the deep state. I'm sure I know your listeners are familiar with what President Trump is going through. You've got the FBI and the DOJ, who are just as corrupt as places like EPA and the Department of Interior, that they have important missions, but instead of using those missions to actually better Americans' lives, they play out on these catty jurisdictional warfares to try and maintain relevance, and they direct their ire towards the people they that they disagree with. And that doesn't just include political appointees. I think we're on the front end of receiving all of that, but that also extends to businesses they disagree with and industries that are held captive by the power these agencies actually do have over Americans' day-to-day lives. And that's what my book is about, exposing them for how deep the problem is. And then how do we, the American people, actually push back using this gift, our constitutional republic that the founders gave us, that we have the ability to actually do something about.
I love that. You really put it so eloquently, because it's not always easy to explain that concept to people that typically look at the world through positive eyes, and they think, oh, come on, you're making it up, or nobody's really that bad. But people are really that bad. Tell us a little bit about what you've experienced, some of your anecdotal experiences with seeing the administrative state, the permanent class of the government go after businesses.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a version of crony capitalism. I saw it. Some of the worst was in our Office of Transportation and Air Quality Standards, where you have these larger companies that get really cozy with bureaucrats, and they will use their regulatory relationships to convince bureaucrats to draft rules and regulations that put their competition either wholly out of business or make their life so difficult, eventually they're going to have to sell. And who's sitting there ready to buy their business at pennies on the dollar? Well, it's those larger corporations that worked with bureaucrats within agencies like EPA to make their bottom line much more difficult to cover, and they're going to gobble up their either middle tier or lower tier competition. And I saw that across a number of different categories. The other piece of it too is approving permits, but approving permits with what we called regulatory bombs in them, or little handouts to their nonprofit left-wing activist groups that would then sue the agency for approving certain types of permitting activity, whether it's building out a new facility or expanding a certain type of industry. The third-party nonprofits would have the inside scoop on legal vulnerabilities that were built into permit approvals, and then they would use that to undermine the entity's ability to actually move forward with that economic development or expanded business opportunity. So, there's so many different tools that they push out on the American people, and that is not the role of these agencies. I had an inside look at EPA, but this type of thing happens across the board at every single administrative agency, and that's because if you look at the root of the problem, it's kind of like the idea, the fruit of the poisonous tree. All of these institutions were created as a tool of the progressive left, and that's why they push back against conservatives and they push back against people and entities that relish individual liberty and independence and that pursuit of happiness, through access to the marketplace and growing personal capital.
Really well put. They talk about joy so much, but they literally get in the way of one's pursuit of happiness. Really, really, really well put. Now, Mandy, I want you to take a moment and I guess I think you've given a great description of the macro, but do you have like a micro example that you could give us, maybe something from the book without giving it all away, where, the listeners can really, kind of, visualize it in their mind of exactly what this type of, I'm going to say, warfare looks like?
Well, yeah, I think I really try to shine the light on what it was like to be a political appointee where I grew up with a very positive vision of how the government should work. And that bubble was completely burst walking into the administrative state. And I think that the one of the other specific examples is the fact that I too have been on the receiving end of a subpoena from the FBI and the Office of Inspector General at EPA. So you can add me to this list of former Trump appointees that is on the receiving end of investigatory harassment, not because we did anything wrong per se, but because we were on the wrong side of what progressives thinks we should have been doing, and they really don't want us to come back. And so this is another example of weaponization of a federal entity trying to scare former appointees away from ever coming back and serving someone like President Trump to effectuate the radical reform we know needs to occur. Man,
well, we need fighters like you. Mandy Gunasekara, I want you to tell us a little bit about how you went from growing up in a small town in Mississippi to ending up in the swamp when we come back. Folks, we're coming right back with the author of Y'all Fired, Southern Belle's Guide to Restoring Federalism and Draining the Swamp. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Congratulations on just an amazing show. I know you worked so hard in the industry and nobody deserves it more than you do. So I'm happy to see you really succeeding here. It's awesome.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back, familia. We continue our conversation with the former chief of staff at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency during the Trump years. Her name is Mandy Gunasekara, and she's the author of Y'all Fired, a Southern Belle's Guide to Restoring Federalism and Draining the Swamp. And Mandy, how does a nice Mississippi girl like you end up in the D.C. swamp?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Two main reasons, my grandmother and my father. My grandmother was pretty instrumental in bringing the Republican Party down to our small little county in Mississippi. It's called Newton County, Central Mississippi. And back in the 60s and 70s, when it was not popular to be a Republican in the Deep South, she started that movement. So I grew up around a family firmly rooted in bringing conservative ideals, even in tough situations. And the second was my dad. He was an active duty military officer. And I grew up knowing I wanted to find a way to serve my country. And my father had recommended, after assessing my various skills, to go up and do an internship in Washington, D.C. And so I did. I interned for my local congressman after my freshman year in college. This was in 2004. And I actually was really excited by the hustle and bustle of Capitol Hill. And so I knew I wanted to come back and be a part of it because I thought it was a good way to make a positive difference and fulfill that service need and help protect and grow the conservative movement that my grandmother had worked so hard on.
And why didn't you run away once you saw how the swamp creatures worked?
That's a good question. I was actually blessed that the principals I worked for, so whether it was the members of Congress, the senators, or the administrator, and then obviously the president, the principals that I worked for were really inspiring people where I was willing to deal with the nastiness that is Washington, D.C., to fulfill their relative goals that were consistent with the broader mission. And I've been I'm not a confrontational person. I really am not. But I've always found myself in these situations where I seem to be outnumbered, but walk into a room where I think the point I'm making or the position I'm representing needs to be heard, and I can't walk away from it.
Good for you. Now, Mandy, let everybody know how they could find out more about the work you're doing now. What are you doing now? Are you coming back to D.C.? You alluded that you don't want to do that in your statements to Ranking Member Raskin. What's next for you?
Yeah, no, right now I'm focusing on the book, and then I have a visiting fellowship with the Heritage Foundation. We've been working on a number of really great projects to bolster the chances of some really great reforms to actually occur. So the best way to follow me is on X at Mississippi MG. If folks want to learn more about the book or read some of the synopses, they can check it out on either Amazon or Barnes & Noble.
Awesome. And I guess final point I wanted to follow up with actually earlier on, and it slipped my mind. But I think you did great in your explanation that you wrote the part of the Project 2025 and you had no collusion, if you will, from Trump or any of the campaign people. What is your overall sense of this? I'll give you my thought is I feel like the Democrats have taken what, like you've mentioned, is a relatively conservative plan that gets updated every now and again. And tried to cherry pick certain parts, exaggerate those parts, and make it seem like it's this crazy dictatorial plan that Trump came up with as an evil mastermind. And I don't know that it's working, but I think for some people there are questions that are being raised, like, what's that all about? Are you finding similar? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's the left's attempt and their media allies to distract the American public with regard to what's actually going on in the world around them. And so they are cherry picking certain policies that have been proposed and then creating this false future and then trying to say that President Trump would institute these policies on day one. And it's simply not true. And one of the things I've said it many times, it is the president's prerogative to determine what policies he ultimately decides he wants to implement. A lot of people are going to recommend a lot of things, and I've been in the room when people are recommending things the President Trump ultimately doesn't want to go with, and he is perfectly capable of saying no, and that's actually a really great thing about him. I've seen it. So this is just the left's attempt to distract voters from what's really going on around them by trying to paint something so egregious and bad. And the reality is President Trump, he had nothing to do with this, with the policy handbook. It's called the Mandate for Leadership. He had nothing to do with it, but the left, it doesn't matter if it's a lie. If they think that they can paint President Trump in some negative light, they will use any tool and any lie to try and make that happen. And that's what's going on here.
Outstanding. Folks, check her out at Mississippi MG on Twitter and the rest of the social media, and grab a copy or 2 copies of the book on Amazon, one for yourself, one to give away. The book is Y'all Fired, a Southern Belle's Guide to Restoring Federalism and Draining the Swamp. Mandy Gunasekara, thank you for being here. Hope to speak with you again soon.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks again for having me, Rich.
You bet. Good night. A true gentlewoman, scholar, and patriot. All right, folks, I'm coming right back. Your calls and a couple other things that are going on in the news. Keep it locked right here.
This This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Across America to the liberty-loving Latino, Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The thing about our kooky election system is that Democrats are built to win the popular vote. You know, it's very hard for Republicans to win it because they have such a narrow coalition that's almost monoracial. It's not completely monoracial, but it's close to it. But Democrats have to win the popular vote, you know, conversely, by an enormous spread in order to carry the Electoral College. So Hillary Clinton can win by 3 million and lose, and, you know, Joe Biden can win by 5 million and win, and President Obama, he won by 10 and then 5. So there is still a lot of nervousness. And one of the things that's making a lot of folks nervous is this aggressiveness to pull folks off the voter rolls. Mm-hmm. It's been super aggressive on the part of Republican governors and secretaries of state.
That is Joy Reid. And you know her from MSNBC. And she says Democrats are built to win the popular vote. Now, I'm going to agree with her on that statement, maybe to the chagrin or surprise of many of you all. But here's the thing. It's not that our election system is kooky, and this is part of the big lie being perpetuated and perpetrated by the radicals in the media, the radical left within the media, the radical left within our government. The only thing kooky about our election system is that the popular vote is not a part of our election system because we are not a pure democracy. And this is something that we've never been. It's not like we were once this and we went away from it, or we've always had elections by majority rule, or all in favor say aye. This has never been the case. There's never been an election for president of the United States that wasn't conducted under the Electoral College. Period, the end. It's never happened. So what's so kooky about this system that we've always used? The fact that it has a built-in fail-safe to make sure that if you have states like California that have an overwhelming amount of Democrats, or states like New York that have an overwhelming amount of Republicans, that they can tip the scale in either direction. But Rich, what about red states like Texas that have an overwhelming amount of Republicans? Well, guess what? It doesn't tip any scale. Right? It just doesn't. When you look at the math and you see every election, Texas is somewhat competitive. New York is never competitive, rarely, as is California. So when you have these states that have literally amassed all the power in the world through every scheme they can come up with, whether it's redistricting, whether it's allowing everybody and their mama to vote, this is what we've got. So yeah, when you have these built-in demographics, it's not that you're built to win the popular vote. It's that you've built the system, so that you can win the popular vote. Tell the truth, Joy Reid. Anyway, folks, more to come straight ahead. We're going to get into a lot more conversation. Keep it locked right here with me, Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere.
From the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be with you. This is our number 2 Tuesday night edition of the program, and plenty to discuss. Let me see, just a couple of quick headlines here. You've got George Soros all over the place. I'll get into that maybe in hour number 3. His organizations that he's backing are leveraging migrants to sway elections. You've got the FCC moving with unprecedented speed to approve a company that George Soros has backed that bought the debt of a radio station company, some stations which this program airs on, 200 stations that he's bought. And they're trying to fast track this so he can have it in time for election. Even the FCC chair said, I've never seen anything like this being done so quickly and for no apparent reason. And there's foreign money being used for this. They've got foreign people coming in that they're saying could potentially sway elections. A lot of crazy stuff. We're going to get to that momentarily, in a little bit, I should say. Then we've got the son of the suspect in the second Trump assassination attempt was arrested on child pornography charges. This was a pretty interesting story. Trump assassination attempt suspect Ryan Routh, his son, Orrin Routh, was arrested on child porn charges after the feds found hundreds of sick images on his electronic devices. Let's see the details here. He was arrested earlier today, and his name is Orrin Routh, 35 years old. He's accused of receiving and possessing child porn in North Carolina. And on, September 21st, they searched his home, and they found hundreds of files on his equipment. His dad, of course, is the guy that tried to kill Trump on September 15th. And I'm looking at his mugshot. Man, he looks deranged. I'm not trying to say he's guilty. As a matter of fact, my offline commentary was, when the government wants to set you up, I think kiddie porn is the first thing they do is plant that on you to make you look like a crazy. But this guy makes himself look like a crazy if you take a look at his picture. Man, it's crazy. Maybe I'll tweet this out so you could see it. But speaking of Ryan Routh, his dad, another crazy-looking dude who acts crazily. Oh, that's so funny. They were both arrested by cops that were dressed very similarly with rifles and T-shirts and body armor on there. Anyway, I want to get to this story on Ryan Routh because we still don't know a whole lot about what was going on, right? There's so much that has happened that we don't know anything about, and I'm curious. I'm also curious why there are so many cameras, like news cameras, when this guy, the kiddie porn guy, got arrested. The whole thing looked like an episode of Cops, kind of like when they went after Manafort and Roger Stone, which always begs the question, right? What's going on here? Anyway, I want to go to a clip of President Trump at a rally earlier today where he was talking about this attempt at assassination on his life. Listen to this.
First question I ask is, how many people were killed? Because with so many people, no matter where a bullet goes, going to hit somebody. They said 3 are probably dead. Well, the 2 were taken immediately to the hospital. The doctors were great. I was taken to a hospital. The doctor was, the whole hospital was fantastic. I mean, just so professional, so good. He looked at me, he said, "You are the luckiest man." I said, "No, maybe it's something else." But he couldn't believe it. The doctor said, "Sir, this would be a good day for you to go to the lottery and buy a nice ticket." Because what happened here, I've never said anything like that. But look, some very good things happen. The nicest thing when people say, it was God, and God came down and he saved you because he wants you to bring America back. So many people say
bringing America back. That's, again, President Trump at a Make America Great Again rally. And I want to get some insight from somebody who's investigating this from America First Legal. Now, they've been investigating the assassination attempts into President Trump, and rightfully so. They should, because we're not hearing anything that we need to hear from, I'm going to call him the clown running the Secret Service, the guy named Roe. This guy, every time I see him, he seems like a petulant 2-year-old that's being forced to share a toy that he doesn't want to share. He's always got his arms folded and a pout on his face, and he's just like, I serve with this guy. He's my friend, and we're doing the best we can. And nobody wants to hear that, right? Nobody wants to hear it. The reason you have a job today is because the lady before you sucked at her job, and she failed. And the guy had a bullet whiz by the side of his head because he decided to move and look at a sign. Had he not, It would have been a JFK all over again. So you should take the job. Imagine taking a job, even something like this. You take a radio job and you realize, I can't talk for 3 hours. Well, then don't take that job. Same thing with this guy. If you can't run the Secret Service, don't take the job. I'm going to go with disgusted. I'm disgusted in Director Rowe's performance. I had a lot of choice words for him in some analysis I gave over the weekend on Newsmax. And we're going to get into a little bit more of it right now with the Vice President of America First Legal, Dan Epstein. Welcome, sir.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. So let's talk about what America First Legal is doing to find out more about what happened to President Trump and how the government, in my opinion, is slow-walking this stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, this week, we submitted a number of Freedom of Information Act requests, which are public records requests that you send to the executive branch to get information. And, of course, several weeks ago, we were one of the first organizations to seek this information regarding the first Trump assassination attempt by Thomas Crooks, and we're now litigating that. And this is our second go-around where we want from various Biden administration departments, everything from the DOD to the State Department to the Department of Homeland Security and the CIA. We want documents about what they knew regarding Ryan Wesley Routh, as well as any information they had about security concerns, anything in terms of what they knew or should have known. And we want to get to the bottom of that. And unfortunately, this is an administration where it's clearly obvious that this information needs to be made available to the public to ensure that national security threats don't happen again. This is the second time this thing has happened. This administration says that there is not a strong public interest in disseminating this information. And that's what they did on our last FOIA requests. And we imagine that's the same position that they're going to take here.
Folks, we're on with Dan Epstein, Vice President of America First Legal. And you guys are doing these FOIA requests, and you're trying. Are you meeting a lot of roadblocks? Are you having trouble getting the information you're trying to get, or are they playing ball with you?
Well, Rich, at least with our first tranche of records that we sent several weeks ago, records requests that we sent several weeks ago, the agency did say we're going to expedite some of these requests. But at the end of the day, did not provide the requested information. That's why we've had to bring lawsuits against this administration regarding those documents. And here, we sent these requests a few days ago, but ultimately, we were requested, Rich, what's known as expedited processing. And that means the agency's got to produce the documents within 10 days. We are likely not going to see that and probably going to have to sue on these again. And that's really, Rich, that should be of enormous concern to all of your great listeners, which is why does it take a lawsuit to get information that could prevent the next assassination attempt on a president of the United States of America? That's absolutely ridiculous. That should be the story in itself, that this Biden administration is not letting the public know about these things. That's how, it's not like the Biden administration is calling up every police office in the country and saying, we're going to give you information so that you could prepare for a next potential assassination attempt on the president. Or let's just, try to get President Trump's campaign schedule and then call up those police officers. That's not happening. And so getting this information out to the public, getting good reporters like yourself, Rich, to be talking about these things allows for preparedness by police folks, by, the National Guard, by others who could potentially protect a former presidential official and a presidential candidate. And of course, that's not happening. The Biden administration likes the lack of transparency here because they don't want, someone poking around and finding the truth. And the truth is probably something like this, Rich, which is that, the Secret Service, we didn't have the A-team in Butler, Pennsylvania that day. Or after that event, we did not engage in appropriate protocols to make sure that the former president's area was fully swept and fully secure. I mean, we're talking, 300 feet? Ryan Ruth was able to get into? I mean, that's ridiculous. And
I don't
the
think
Biden
that's
administration doesn't want any evidence that they were negligent and continue to be negligent.
Folks, we're on with Dan Epstein. Now, Dan Epstein, VP of America First Legal, what do you say to people that are saying, look, this is an ongoing investigation. This is a law enforcement investigation conducted by the Secret Service, and we, the American people, just can't be privy to this right now. We didn't find out things immediately about Reagan. We didn't find out a lot of things about Kennedy until just recently. So what makes us think it's fair to get information this quickly at this point when they're still investigating?
You know, it's a great question, Rich. Look, I think there's two ways of thinking about this. The first is on Thomas Crooks. There's no law enforcement investigation. He's not a target. He's not subject to due process. Why? Because he's dead.
He's dead, right?
Okay. There's no law enforcement investigation of Thomas Crooks. Okay. And so, the whole reason why the executive branch will say during a law enforcement investigation why they won't make certain disclosures is because they don't want witnesses being kind of, flipped or exposed in a way that effectively interferes with the prosecution of an alleged criminal. That's not an issue here. And in the case of Ruth, there's no question as to who engaged in the assassination attempt. It was him. Okay, so what's the law enforcement process that gets interfered with? Here, right, we know that they've identified who it is. There's no question of, was there another potential defendant, or are there witnesses who are going to say he wasn't the defendant? That's not an issue here. And so there's no interference with law enforcement to make these disclosures. By the way, this isn't a question like the FBI had an ongoing investigation or the FBI had, some investigations into potential assassination attempts on the president. No, this was a lone wolf type in both situations where it was the Secret Service that was not effectively given protocols, given training, given other sorts of things to protect the president. And that's not getting those facts does not interfere with law enforcement. In fact, it's quite the reverse. It makes law enforcement better.
Amen to that. Dan Epstein, VP of America First Legal, is with us, and we're going to continue our conversation with him straight ahead.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I give Secret Service a hell of a lot of credit. These are, look, they've been hit hard because of Butler, because, the building should have been taken care of, and they understand that. But when I went down, I had 4, 5, 6 people right on top of me, and there were bullets flying right over our heads. A lot of bullets were flying right over our head. They were not sitting back and taking a pass. They were not saying, "Oh, gee, I'm not going to go over that. That's dangerous stuff." They were on top of me in seconds, and you got to give them a lot of credit. But here you have to give them credit, too, because this agent, I would have been in that location within 10 minutes, right? And right next to the guy, practically. And this guy spotted, shot.
That's President Trump, El Trumpito, Donaldus Magnus, the 45th president of these United States, at a rally in Savannah, Georgia, a couple hours ago, being very gracious, a lot more gracious than I would be towards the Secret Service, very generous indeed. Our guest is the Vice President of America First Legal, Dan Epstein. Dan Epstein, what's the next step in your investigation? What can we expect to see coming out of America First Legal?
Rich, great question. Based off America First Legal's efforts and the fact that we've now, on the Thomas Crooks issue, brought litigation, our hope is that the courts are going to immediately order the agencies to start producing records, or at least identifying the scope of potentially responsive records. And that will at least tell us, what did the CIA know? Clearly, what did the Secret Service know? And what did higher ups of the Department of Homeland Security, including Alejandro Mayorkas, know? With our current investigation focused on Ryan Ruth, again, our hope is that we don't have to sue to get documents, that they understand the gravity of this. They understand that their law enforcement defenses are fairly weak, and that this information needs to get public. And it needs to get public because withholding information from the first assassination attempt didn't prevent the second assassination attempt. And let's pray that there's not a next attempt.
Yeah, amen to that. Now, Dan Epstein, let everyone know how they can keep up to speed with the work that you guys are doing at America First Legal, how they follow you online, etc.
Yeah, no, great. America First Legal, you can access our website at aflegal.org. We're also on X. We're on Truth Social. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We're all over the social media. But you can every day we are bringing lawsuits against woke corporations. We're bringing lawsuits against this lawless Biden administration. We're bringing investigations. We're filing briefs before the Supreme Court. We are on the top of the spear for America First principles, America First litigation. You should be encouraged to visit us, follow what we do. We'd love to get feedback. We'd love to get comments because our goal is to make America greater.
Outstanding. Well, Dan Epstein, you are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. I want to thank you for being with us, and Godspeed to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Rich. Take care.
You bet. All right, amigos, we continue our conversation straight ahead, switching gears to find out what is going on with foreign companies that are now licensing American medical innovation. You've got China doing this. You got Russia doing it. You've got George Soros using his company to along with foreign investment to purchase radio stations to influence the next election. You've got him importing foreign citizens through one of the plans he's got that would allow one of the policy suggestions that's out there is to allow immigrants to vote in this coming election. Lots of crazy things are going on. Plus, we've heard that one court in Arizona said, "Look, these people can vote. There's no way to figure it out in time. Even if they're non-citizens, they're going to be able to vote." A lot of interesting moving parts are happening right now in real time. So we're going to get to all of that stuff. And we're going to find out specifically about these foreign companies licensing American medical innovation like Russia and China from Amber Todoroff. She's a deputy public policy editor for Open the Books Foundation. So we'll do that straight ahead. Keep it locked right here. I'm Rich Valdez.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
So as your president, here is the deal that I will be offering to every major company and manufacturer on earth. I will give you the lowest taxes, the lowest energy costs, the lowest regulatory burden, and free access to the best and biggest market on the planet, but only if you make your product here in America. It all goes away if you don't make your product here, and hire American workers for the job. If you don't make your product here, then you will have to pay a tariff, a very substantial tariff, when you send your product into the United States. And by the way, for years they knocked the word tariff, properly used, is a beautiful word. One of the most beautiful words I've ever heard. It's music to my ears. A lot of bad people didn't like that word, but now they're finding out I was right. And we will take in hundreds of billions of dollars into our treasury and use that money to benefit the American citizens. And it will not cause inflation, by the way.
That, of course, President Trump, El Trompito, Donaldus Magnus, the 45th president of these United States, at his rally earlier today in Savannah, Georgia, talking about putting America first, bringing manufacturing back by incentivizing manufacturing, saying, look, it's going to be way cheaper to make it in America than make it in China and pay 100% tariff. So you do the math. And that's ultimately the job of policymakers, is to create the conditions to either persuade or dissuade something from happening. And it seems like he's got a firm grip on this. Some people are challenging him, saying, no, you can't do that because it's going to cost us more money. And the reality is it will drive up the prices on foreign goods, hopefully reducing the cost on domestic goods. And that's where the math should be mathing. But it seems that that's the case for the future. But the current case that we have is an administration that is literally allowing all sorts of foreign investment to go on, whether it's the sale of radio stations to George Soros and his groups, or the battery, electric vehicle battery plant that they're thinking of putting in Michigan, or even foreign companies that are now licensing American medical innovations. And you got China and Russia trying to get in on it. So I want to bring in our guest, Amber Todoroff. She's Deputy Public Policy Editor for OpenTheBooks.com. And Amber, welcome.
Hi, thanks, Rich. Thanks for having me on.
That's my pleasure. And we're accustomed to having Adam Andrzejewski on, and I've announced to the audience a while back of his unfortunate passing, but I wanted to extend my condolences to you as well. And my deepest sympathy to everybody over at Open the Books.
Thank you very much. Adam was a wonderful, he was so much more than a boss to me. He was a friend. He was just a really wonderful person, a fighter and a good friend, too. Yes, he is very much missed.
Yeah, and we miss him as well. Now, Amber, I want to get into this because I see that this administration, in my opinion, has been very, soft or, just not very willing to stand up for America or put America first in any way, and allowing a lot of foreign investment that is probably not to our benefit. Tell us what you can about foreign companies licensing American medical innovation.
So just a little bit of background. Open the Books has been fighting to get transparency on royalty payments to scientists at the NIH for the past 2, maybe almost 3 years now. And it's been extremely hard to get any information on the scientists getting the money, how much money they're getting, who is paying them. And finally, after a few years with our partner Judicial Watch, we were able to get them to redact the payments and the companies getting the payments. We don't know exactly the amounts that each individual scientist is getting, but we at least know the names of most of the scientists and the companies that are paying them. So that's just some background. And now, because we know the names of the companies that are paying the scientists, we know that there are quite a few foreign licensees. And these include, some of them are Germany, Switzerland, England, et cetera. But there's Russia and there's China, Belarus. And this can be quite troubling. Some of these companies that from China paying NIH royalties, licensing American products to use for themselves, and paying American federal scientists are working with the Chinese Communist Party, the government of China.
This is horrible. This is like the Fauci scandal, but on steroids, because he's retired, but there's a bunch of him out there apparently.
Yeah, it's a huge nexus, and as we also found, and this is even like in a graph on their website, but starting last year, there has been more foreign licensees of American patents from the NIH than American licensees. So wow. 159 non-U.S. licensees versus 102 American licensees.
Did your investigation determine if this is something that's relative to 2024, or has this been the case in recent years?
So that is the first time that has happened since their records begin, which are in 2006. If it happened before then, we don't know. But since 2006, that is the case.
Well, that's interesting. So, I mean, from my position, it would seem that seems to be a rush in this last year. Like, okay, we may not be here next year, or we may lose this election or whatever it is, and it's time for us to do whatever deals we're making and get them done quickly. And I mean, that's how I would look at it. Again, I am a cynical person that tends to view things through the lens of politics. But do you think there's any truth in what I'm saying?
That's a very interesting observation and thought. Maybe it could be. What's quite interesting is while we don't know the number of the scientists or the individual number amount that the scientists are getting in royalty payments, we do know aggregate amounts. And these amounts spiked dramatically over the past few years. In 2022, 2023, there were $710 million worth of payments into the NIH to its scientists and to the agencies itself. This is far higher than any time in the past 10 years that we have recorded. Normally, it's it's not even close to that. It's less than $50 million a year.
Wow. Very interesting. I want you to stick with us, Amber. I want to continue this conversation and get some more details on how China and Russia are holding these patents. And again, I've even spoken to some scientists that have worked on behalf of the government and felt that they did that. Anyway, I'll get into that because the amount of money they make is a lot. And one would think that should go back into the taxpayers' coffers since it was taxpayer dollars that funded most of this research. Folks, we're coming right back with Amber Todoroff, Deputy Public Policy Editor for Open the Books Foundation. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Mr. Call Screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And something that I want to ask our guest, and again, our guest, by the way, is Amber Todoroff. She is the Deputy Public Policy Editor at OpenTheBooks.com, the Open the Books Foundation. And Amber, I've had a scientist on before who has gotten patents and earned royalties through programs that he's developed, vaccines he's created, or other therapies. And the argument made to me was I could make more money in the private sector. So if I go to work for the government, it's only fair that I'm going to get the same royalty I would get if I worked for a private lab. And this is why he says it's okay for us to get that because we're putting in the work. And I get that argument. I don't necessarily agree with it in all of it, but I understand the merits of it. But help me understand how the impact that this has on we the people and obviously that are funding most of this research through our tax dollars.
Yeah, so I get that. You're right. I don't necessarily agree with it. I think the federal government also offers very generous benefits packages. And, the royalties that the federal government pays, they're a lot, but they're not that much. And they're not that much for the vast majority of people. So the annual cap that they can make is $150,000 per year. And not very many. Very few people would be making that cap. So is that like a huge incentive for them? Surely they would be able to make far more in the private sector, given that the vast majority do not make $150,000 a year. Maybe they'll make like a couple hundred or a few thousand. But the point is, when companies do license these products from the NIH, they start a relationship with these scientists. The scientists, get more than just money. They also get clout. They get respect and esteem in their career. And when they get higher positions of management, they want to promote their own ideas, their own patents. Maybe they're not doing it consciously. Maybe they believe that their inventions and their ideas are the correct ways. But still, this is not, this sort of influence can obviously have negative effects and clearly needs a lot of oversight.
And, something that I think about, and again, this is, a little bit off to the side here, but I think an interesting point nonetheless, is let's just say you hire someone to do any work in government, whether it's, scientific work or otherwise. You hire, I don't know, figuratively speaking, let's say they hired Rush Limbaugh to be the press secretary at the White House because he's a great communicator, during his day when he was around. Is he supposed to turn around and say, well, I make $40 million a year talking on the radio? Nobody's going to give him $40 million a year to work in government, right? So I think the expectation everywhere else is that you're going to take a pay cut going into government, yet the scientists are like, well, I could make this money elsewhere. And I guess maybe because of the importance of the work, I still haven't figured out how they put that argument together. But what I used that to preface this question. Tell me, and I guess walk us through, because I'm not entirely familiar with it, and I'd love to get your input on it. What is this licensing process like? So China and Russia and these foreign entities, what are they? What I guess process do they have to go through, and how does it work?
So really interesting question, and this is just one of those things that we don't know as much about as we should. So on the scientist end, they make an invention at a lab, and then that patent goes into the Office of Technology Transfer at the NIH. And they're the ones that package up a license and connect with licensees, private pharmaceutical companies, to pay royalties to the scientists. And
so they go ahead and sell it or lease it out to some pharmaceutical company, and then they get paid on that, and that's how they pay this royalty to the scientist?
Yes, exactly. And you'll see job descriptions for Office of Technology Transfer. They're very sales oriented, and they're looking for people who have relationships with pharmaceutical companies already, things crazy. Like that.
So in effect, our government is Big Pharma.
It is a very strange relationship indeed. And the incentives are very perverse. Certainly the people, the individual bureaucrats at Office of Technology Transfer want to keep their numbers up and do whatever it takes to, make their sales and keep those numbers going up. Even if it's not remunerative for them personally, maybe it's not, they still have incentive to make these deals.
Wow. Outstanding reporting here, Amber. If folks want to learn more about the work that you're doing and take a look at some of this reporting, how do they access it? Where do they go, and how do they follow you?
Yeah, so you should go to openthebooks.com or openthebooks.substack.com. We post all of our investigations on our website, including this latest report, which is in a Substack called "More Foreign Companies Now Licensing American Medical Innovations, Including in China, Russia." That's the name of the Substack article, and it also includes the NIH report, which you can read. It's pretty long; it's 40 pages long, but lots of interesting facts that we need to share with the public.
Outstanding. Amber Todoroff, thank you for being with us tonight. Godspeed to you. Check her out at openthebooks.com and check out this report on foreign companies licensing American medical innovation. Definitely worth the read. Thank you, Amber.
Great. Thanks a lot. Bye.
You bet. All right, amigos, we will continue with more discussion. Plus, your calls are coming up. Open phones across America. Open Phone America starts in just a few minutes right after our 3-minute break. We'll come back. We'll set up for that at the top of the next hour. So keep it locked right here. Don't go anywhere. Hour number 3 coming up very soon.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, we're going to grab a call before we jump into Open Phone America. And I want to go to one of our OGs here, Gil in the Philippine jungle. Gil, what's going on, brother? Listening to richvaldez.com.
Well, the internet is here now. It wasn't 2 years ago, and I have a kind of a weak cell signal, but I'm getting through. But I have a quick Camilla Harris joke for you.
Go for it.
And it kind of goes like this. Second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, was feeling jealous because nobody's paying attention to him. He even proposed a debate with Melania Trump, but that didn't go anywhere. But he did get an offer for an interview from Fox News, so he took it. And the ground rules were everything is fair game, and he would tell the truth. And about 4 minutes into the interview asked him, "Tell us about your sex life. How is intimacy?" And he hesitates, and he says, "Well, it's not very good. I'm supposed to tell the truth, and I will. At night, when Camilla comes to the bedroom, she has a lot of stuff in her hair and goop on her face, and she doesn't look like she does when you see her in the media. And when she disrobes, it's just padding and silicone boobs. So I can't perform as a man. It's only one time could I perform, and that time I had to take 5 Viagra tablets and wear a blindfold so I don't see her." So the interviewer says, "Well, that shows that Willie Brown is a better man than you." And he says, "Willie Brown is 90 years old. How could he possibly be a better man than me?"
Oh,
and the
boy.
answer was, well, all those years ago when...
All right, Gil, we're out of time. Sorry, brother. Folks, we're coming right back. More to come straight ahead. Rich Valdez, don't go anywhere.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media, and happy to be here with you, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Give me a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And we've talked about a lot tonight. We've talked about the investigation into the 2 assassination attempts on President Trump. We've talked about the office of Que Mala Eres. That's right, Kamala Harris. being shot up in Arizona. We have a report on that from Phoenix 10 News. Listen to this.
Police in Tempe investigating what appears to be shots fired at a Democratic Party campaign office. Bullet holes here in the glass entryway. The office is in a shopping center near Priest and Southern. Fortunately, no one was inside at the time. It's being investigated as a property damage crime, and the Mesa Forensic Unit is assisting.
Again, that information breaking earlier today, or actually overnight last night. And I don't know. They haven't gotten anybody. There's not a lot of updates on it. But shots were fired. A month ago, shots were also fired from a BB gun. Now they were shot and shattered the glass from a real gun. So is it a setup? Is it a fake, phony fraud? I don't know, and I'm not going to say that it is. I am going to say that it's curious, to say the least, right? This is not an actual attempt on her life like we saw with Trump on video. Right? All this stuff happened on video. So you can't say it was staged. People are saying it's staged. It's not staged. Now, there's some people out there on our side of the aisle that are saying things, or at least I should say my side of the aisle, that are, they suggest that it's being staged because people can't handle the truth. So we have to do things behind people's backs and then come back and pretend to do the same thing that is being done. Some of the logic that my tinfoil hat friends have is just so bizarre. Imagine an earthquake. Imagine a tsunami. Imagine any type of natural disaster. Imagine a beautiful family that gets killed in a car accident. All of these horrific stories get reported on all the time. Nobody says, oh, let's prepare the public. They can't handle this. Sure they can. Right? Everybody loved Bill Cosby, and then the next thing you know, Cosby was drugging women with Quaaludes since the 70s. Okay, guess what? They were ready for that. I mean, come on. This idea, anyway, and I know half of you are thinking, what are you talking about, Valdez? I'll tell you. I have some people that, send me messages on a regular basis, and I try to respond to as many as I can, but I read all of them. And some of my QAnon friends are just, the things that they're willing to believe are just, wow. I have a bridge to sell you, my friends. It really is. It's just crazy, some of the logic they make. And some of the logic that they come up with is that what we're seeing now is a live action replay of what's already occurred. And the reason it's being reported now as to when it happened is because you weren't prepared to know the truth. So it was covered up. You were lied to. Now the truth is being manipulated and things are being reenacted. Go figure. Yeah, just absolute insanity. It really is an insane notion. Anyway, I don't want to get into that because it's a circuitous argument that just really doesn't end. But speaking of the QAnon people, I was at a family event and I overheard some people talking, and the comment was from one person to the other. Person A says, I used to think that evangelical Christians were weird cult-like people, but I've gotten to know some of them and been to some of their church services, and I've realized they're just really enthusiastic about something they believe in a lot of, and not too different from Catholics. And I myself, this is what this person was saying, that they themselves were Catholics, and that, there was a lot of similarity. And the other person, who is a serious QAnon person, turns to them and says, I still think that the evangelical Christians are cult-like individuals because they tend to just have this blind faith. And I was floored by this. This is a person I've had many a conversation with that tells me things about QAnon and coded numbers and the times of certain tweets of certain people. And they say things, the most outlandish things like X, Y, and Z are going to be arrested and they're going to be tried for treason. They're going to be put to death at Gitmo in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. As if this is a matter of fact. that this has been confirmed to them, right? That this is reality. It hasn't happened yet, but just wait, it will. And they will criticize someone that believes in a book that is believed to be, by those of us that are believers, inspired by God himself. Just blows me away that I could cite a chapter and verse of a Bible scripture and that this person will cite a timestamp on a chat board from 4chan, 8chan, or whatever the latest iteration of QAnon is, that goes back to no further than 2017. And somehow these predictions that they call 5-year deltas or 6-year deltas and all this jargon they've come up with, that somehow that is more reliable than Jesus and the Bible. And I just thought to myself, it wasn't a conversation I was a party to, thankfully. I was serving myself some food, and I heard it, and I was like, oh, boy. I was just like, when the person that believes in the live-action replay, whether it's interspersed with truth or not, is telling the person that's believing in the Bible, in the Holy Scriptures, that, I don't know, you guys are a little cult-like, but me, I'm the normal, down-to-earth, common sense person. Man, do we have a war on reality. That's all I could say. Anyway, I wanted to share that with you because maybe some of you have friends, family, neighbors that participate in this stuff as well and will believe just about anything they're told except for the actual truth, right? If it's sexy, then it sells. And this is why I never get into that stuff, or I try not to, because just too many people take it I don't know, the wrong way. Anyway, we got calls from Oregon, Indiana, Idaho, Montana, Illinois, and more coming in. The phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And in addition to all of that stuff and the conversation we had on Trump's assassination attempt and the conversation that we had on the royalties that are being collected by folks that work for the federal government, and they're making a killing on certain things that are being subsidized by us, we the people, the taxpayers. There's also a bunch of audio I want to get to from the Trump rally, but there's also conversation that we had on, what was the third topic here that we talked about? It was a very interesting one. On the EPA and the deep state. That was a really interesting conversation that we had. But I also want to get to some other clips that I've got, because I've got this really good long clip that I wanted to play yesterday on that Elon Musk tweeted out about Trump not being a racist. And there's an African-American young man that makes this video, and he just makes the case of why Trump is not. And he includes the receipts and everything. He's got all these video clips, the actual, full length of the clip that includes the context. So nobody can say that, they spliced it to make it seem a certain way. And very interesting clip. We also have a funny clip about what is going on with dating. Apparently, Tinder's not making the splash that it once made in Europe, in particular in Spain. So how are people hooking up and doing dating? Well, they're actually meeting in person at a supermarket. Fascinating story. We'll do that one at the bottom of the hour. And there is also the update that we have on Ryan Routh, the shooter in the Trump assassination attempt number 2, or would-be shooter, who was sticking his barrel out of the tree line there and got called out by the Secret Service with a couple of gunshots and then fled the scene. His son was arrested today on kiddie porn charges. So we'll get the report on that on the way back, and of course your calls and reactions to all of it. 833-482-5337 is the phone number if you want to join our late night national town hall conversation. Of course, it is Open Phone America, so whatever topic you want to discuss, happy to discuss it with you. You'll have about 30 seconds, 45 seconds, maybe a minute, but don't expect to have 2 or 3 minutes because then we won't be able to get to everybody. So the number again, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
The lights are on outside Orrin Roof's home, and a car appears to be in a driveway, but it doesn't seem like anyone is home. I spoke with a mechanic who shares this driveway. He didn't want to go on camera, but told me while working yesterday, he saw Orrin walking down the driveway in a hoodie, cowboy hat, and carrying a bag. Moments later, FBI agents swarmed in, yelled, "Freeze FBI," and arrested him right here. According to court documents, the FBI searched Roof's apartment last weekend and uncovered multiple electronic devices. Investigators say these devices contain hundreds of files of child pornography. It took agents one day to obtain a warrant to search those devices. Greensboro police initially arrested Ruth on drug charges on Saturday. They say he's accused of possessing cocaine, MDMA, ketamine, and various drug paraphernalia. Then on Monday, federal agents took him into custody on more serious charges. We reached out to Greensboro police and the FBI to find out what led to the search of Ruth's apartment, but they referred us to the state and federal charging documents for details. Ruth is going to remain in U.S. Marshal custody. He also has a past running into law enforcement charges out of Wake County in 2016. He has two of those, one for interfering with emergency communications and assault on a female. We reached out to Greensboro police for more details. He's still going to remain in U.S. Marshal custody. In Greensboro, Elijah Skipper, Fox 8 News.
All right, so that's the report on Mr. Routh, because it's Ruth with an O in it, and that's how it looks to me. The Trump assassination attempt suspect number 2 has a son who was arrested. My report says he was arrested this morning, so maybe it happened overnight. But the son, Orrin, O-R-A-N, Routh, 35 years old. Again, that might be Ruth, but with R-O-U-T-H, sounding like Routh. I'm going to go with Routh. And he was arrested in North Carolina. Federal charges here of possessing child pornography. And as I said earlier, I think if you're the government and you want to go after people, the first thing you do, is if you want to go after somebody, you threaten their children, right? You guys might remember, nothing to do with this case. I'm referencing style of the way the FBI works. When General Flynn was asked some questions, and they were like, "Hey, can we ask you a couple of questions?" He was like, "Sure, why not?" They asked him some questions where they set him up so they could say he was lying to the FBI and charge him with what they call a Section 1001 violation. And he wasn't intentionally being, disingenuous with them. He just either misremembered something or, said something but they got him. They got him dead to rights saying, "Oh, you lied." And he was like, "Yeah, but I asked you if I need a lawyer, and I was just having a conversation with you. If I said something inaccurately, excuse me." And they were like, "No, we're doing this." And what'd they do? They threatened his kid, right? They wanted to go after his son and try to put charges on his son, and that was what got him to agree to a gag order, and ultimately, put him on the sidelines. And earlier we talked with Mandy Gunasekara, and she was saying the same thing, right? This is what the deep state was doing, is going after former Trump people, trying to freeze them out, to shut them out, to make sure they didn't say anything about anything to anyone. And they up to and including jailing Peter Navarro, who came home from jail and the very next day was on this program, jailing people like Steve Bannon, who worked in the White House. So this is interesting, right? That this is how the deep state operates, but that is exactly what they do. So my thinking is, if they wanted to go after somebody, they go after their son. And another thing that I would only imagine that they do is if they want to make you look like the enemy and they want people to turn on you, the first thing they could do is say, we found 1 million images of kiddie porn on this kid's camera, cell phone, iPad, whatever it is. What's going to stop them? They lied to get the warrants on Trump. This is what they do. They doctored emails. I wouldn't put it past them in any way. So I'm not saying that's what happened here, but I am saying that's something that I believe that they do. And it makes me wonder. It gives me pause. Now, this guy looks like he's, off his rocker, and I would not doubt that it happened, but I'm not going to confirm that it happened because I don't know. So anyway, I want to get your thoughts on that and more. Let me see. Where do we go? Let's see. Let's go to Ken, Lansing, Michigan, WILS. Go right ahead.
Good evening, my radio amigo.
Yes, sir. What's up, brother?
This kid of the second shooter, I heard him on an interview a week or so ago, and he was saying how his dad's a real cool guy, and the only thing he's ever got in trouble with was a couple parking tickets. So it shows you the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, because I don't think they would be trying to get his kid like that, because they got enough stuff on this guy to where they ain't got to get his kid. And figure this one out for me, would you, Rich?
Sure.
He had $68 in his bank account, and how the hell did he go to Ukraine 5 times in the last 5 or 6 years?
Yeah, I'll tell you, this whole thing is so fishy to me. And when I spoke with General Blaine Holt about it, and when I spoke with Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaefer about it, one being a former general, the other one being a former spy, they had this similar consensus that this guy is probably working in cahoots as a human asset of one of the federal agencies, and things are happening on their dime, and that makes sense. If that's how they keep their hands clean, by you're not an employee, you're not any other connection other than an informant, an informal deal. And it's unfortunate, to say the least. Ken, I appreciate your call, brother. Big shout out to everybody listening on WILS, Lansing, Michigan, battleground state. And Ken, I appreciate it. And folks, we come back with your conversation and a lot more. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. We got a number of people online from Wisconsin, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, Illinois, and more. 833-4-VALDEZ. I'm Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere.
Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. Rich Valdez. And amigos, I want to get into something with you. We're going to get to your calls momentarily. But there was a mom that had an incident, a run-in with somebody that identifies as a minority inspector. I have no idea what that is. But apparently this woman was trying to register her minor daughter to vote. Now, she's scheduled to become 18 by Election Day, and that's the reason they were trying to get her registered. But this goes to to something we've talked about on this show before, which is different organizations, different arms of the government all over the place, from your doctor's office to the software that your doctor uses to store your medical records, to your psychologist, to just about anybody, including your kid's guidance counselor or minority inspector, could now be used as an instrumentality of the Democrat Party to get people registered to vote. This is a pretty long clip. I'm not going to play all of it, but hopefully we'll get the gist of it, of this mom on a rant because they tried to, I'm going to say illegally, register her minor daughter to vote. Check this out.
Because I'm pissed right now.
Okay, what's going on?
So yesterday, you pulled my daughter out of class and you told her that it was mandatory for her to vote.
No, I didn't say it was mandatory.
So that's what she told me. These are her words, that she said it was mandatory that she votes.
No, ma'am. But go ahead. Finish telling me.
Okay. And that you projected your fears and insecurities on her, telling her if Donald Trump was elected, black people would be doomed.
Oh, no, ma'am. No, ma'am. So let me say this. I am a minority inspector.
Okay.
For 1016. And you know, as a minority inspector, you never, ever, ever discuss politics or your beliefs or anything like that.
So can we calm my daughter down here? Because at this point, you're making it like she's a complete liar. My daughter have never told me someone said anything such to her like this.
No, ma'am. So this is what happened. I did call her down to register to vote because we're registering all the 18-year-olds to vote.
She's not 18, she's 17.
Yeah, but she turns 18 before the election.
Yeah, but I could have took my daughter to register her to vote. I did not ask for y'all to register my daughter to vote. I have not even spoke to her about the election yet. And I am not a Harris supporter. I am a Trump supporter.
Yes, ma'am.
So for you to tell her anything, and it's like now you're saying she's lying. So now I want her to come down here.
Listen, I'm not saying your daughter's lying. What I'm saying is that I did call her into my office. I did register her to vote. We did have a conversation about it. She did ask me about Trump. She did ask me about Harris. So we started a conversation about, what's going on. I wasn't projecting anything on her. I was just talking about things that are going on in the world.
Yeah, did you tell her about the border being unsecure? Did you tell her about all the illegal criminals that's in this country right now?
So we did have a conversation about the border, and we did talk about the border policies and all of that. We did have a conversation about everything. So let me just say this. I apologize to you for offending you because that was not my intentions. I was not trying to project any of my political beliefs on your daughter or anything like that.
That's why I don't know why the conversation was had. What consent forms did I sign saying I was okay with my daughter being registered to vote in school? She's still 17 years old.
So what consent forms were signed for that?
None.
Because there really isn't any. We just register students to vote here. At every high school, they're registering students
but
to
she's
vote.
Still not 18. She have until the 21st of October, I believe, to register, and her birthday is on the 5th.
Right. So we are permitted to register all students whose birthday that happens by the 5th because that's the date of the election. So
her birthday's October 5th, not November 5th. So she had until the end of October to register to vote. So that way I could have took her as her mother and I could have explained to her what to do, to look up both policies without me telling her anything.
Right.
This is just not right.
She was asking me questions, and so I was answering her questions.
Yeah, because she wanted to know why did she have to get pulled out of class to register to vote.
No, she didn't. That wasn't the question she asked me. She was asking me questions. That's right.
So now when she said she didn't tell you, the stuff that you told me she told you, that black people will be doomed if Trump becomes president?
Yes, she did. I didn't say black people will be doomed if Trump becomes president. We did have a conversation about policies and different things like that. You were asking me questions, and I was telling you about some of the policies that he had and some policies.
Now you hear the woman; she's digging her way out of it, and they've got the daughter in the room confronting her. Listen to this.
It really is much and so like right, yeah, right.
So you was just like agreeing, like talking?
No, I'm not really, I don't really care about it, so I'm not really engaged in the conversation as much. I'm just like, okay, like, right.
So you didn't ask me any questions at all?
No.
Okay. Well, this is what I'm going to say. I apologize for raising your daughter to vote. At this point, she is registered to vote. If you would like to change that.
I am, because it should not have been done in the first place.
If you would like to change, anything that's on that form that went in, you're welcome to do that.
I know that.
You can go online and do it.
I know.
I didn't feel like I was projecting anything on her.
You are by telling her anything that you saying you didn't say black people be doomed. She's saying you said it. I'm going to believe my daughter because she would not lie to me about something like this. Why would she lie? Why would she?
I asked if I could do it later, and you're like, no, it's kind of like, no, you have to do it now, kind of mandatory. And I'm like, I don't.
Did you feel like I was pressuring you?
Yeah, she said she didn't want to do it at the moment.
She speak to me, honey?
Yeah.
Did you feel like I was pressured?
Yeah, I asked if I could do it another time, and you're like, no, it's kind of mandatory. I'm like, okay. I didn't really know if it was mandatory or not, but.
Okay, well, we're going to agree to disagree on this conversation. I apologize if you feel like you were pressured. I apologize for raising your daughter to vote without your consent and without you having an opportunity to have a conversation with her or even checking anything online. So that's all I can say right now is I apologize.
Yeah, I'm calling the news also.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for coming in, and thank you for registering my kid without my consent. Listen, this is a interesting thing, right? You've got now this woman. So I figured out what a minority inspector is. There's a majority inspector, a minority inspector, and a election judge. This all happened. This is under Pennsylvania election rules, and this happened in Pennsylvania. So this woman works in the school and happens to be, she's an activist, right? Let's just call it what it is. This woman is an activist, likely said the things that she said to her daughter, because why on earth would this girl that's 17 years old who doesn't care about this stuff go and, hey, Mom, by the way, some lady came to me today, told me I had to register to vote. What, really? What'd she say? I don't know. She just said if we didn't vote, black people would be doomed because Trump can't become, she said, what? And I was like, yeah, I thought that was kind of weird because I know you're a Trump person. Right? That's how I envisioned that conversation going. Just like every time my kids have come and told me about the crazy stuff, right? Like the one time they kicked my daughter out of the girls' bathroom because, well, she kicked herself out. Let me just say that. She went outside and she told an administrator, she said, hey, I'm using the bathroom and one of the trans students here, but I don't really feel comfortable using the bathroom with a trans student in the bathroom because, he was in my class a couple of years ago and he was a boy and now he identifies as a girl, but he's still very much a boy. And they were like, you can use another bathroom. And I was ready to go to war for her. But she was also a senior and she was a varsity cheerleader and she was a track athlete. And it would have caused her some embarrassment. And honestly, I didn't want them to jeopardize her ability to graduate. But I was very angry by this. And she told me, knowing that would have likely have been my response. So sometimes you got to pick and choose your battles. And I'm glad for her sake that I didn't, go to war with these people. But it raises a larger question is, if you let people do stuff and you don't call them out on it, they're going to keep doing it. And that's what this woman basically, she was like, oh, she was sorry she got caught, not sorry that she did it. Unbelievable. They're coming after your kids that are not, they're so desperate. And I don't want to use the word desperate in the wrong connotation. They are so aggressive, so on point and on their game, right? I don't know anybody off the top of my head. I can't think of anybody that I could say, oh, my friend so-and-so, he's out there running a database of 17-year-olds, and he's got, conservative activists all over the schools in that county trying to get 17-year-olds to get out and vote for Trump. I just can't name one. So can you fault our side, the Trump side, the conservative side, Republican side, for being sloppy? I guess you could make that case. Could you say that we're being more couth than they are? You could probably make that case, too. More ethical, probably. But is it unethical? I would say it is if you're an election judge and you're doing this, or a minority inspector, and you're doing this in your day job in the school system. But the whole thing is just crazy. So I want to get your thoughts on this. How do you react if your teenager comes home and says, look, I'm not 18 yet, but they registered me to vote. They use my social security number and all that stuff. I'd love to know more about it. By the way, if you want to see this video, it's on TikTok. The mom's name is Kay Montana. Her handle is Kay Montana 24, and she's out of Pennsylvania. Anyway, your calls and more coming up right now, 833-482-5337.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Best head of hair in live late night radio 6 years in a row. It's Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back to the phones we go. Let's go to Dan, Salem, Wisconsin, WLIP. Dan, go right ahead.
Hi, Rich. That was a very interesting story or that recording. But if I was that mother, I would get a hold of a lawyer and sue that school district, because that woman that did that to that daughter, she's an agent of the principal, and sue her for emotional distress and mental anguish as a result of what she'd done to her daughter.
I think that's a great idea, Dan, because it's so crazy to see how these people behave, how they act, how they do these things. You gotta play the game the way they do. They'd be suing us over that, so I think we got to sue them back. Excellent point, Dan in Salem, Wisconsin. WLIP in the building. Thank you, sir. Let us continue. Where do we want to go here? Let's go to Mark, Washington, Indiana. WAOV. Mark, go right ahead.
I know this may be a little bit off on regards to the thing, but the woman that called in about her daughter, I was reminded back during COVID when they were giving shots that were non-tested, they actually had a group of children that they gave the vaccine to, and the kids came home and told their parents, and they had not signed any consent form for them to take a vaccine that now they're saying could cause heart attacks and stuff.
You know, Mark, I remember when that story came out, and it was crazy. Yeah, I totally remember. And I thought to myself, oh, my gosh, if somebody were to inject my kid with anything, just by sending them to school, since when do we do that? But they were like, oh, schools were a good place to do it. You know, some kids. Yeah, I remember. It wasn't a whole lot of kids. But the fact that it happened to even a single kid is totally unacceptable. And again, it's another example of how this didn't happen in Republican areas, right? It was Democrats that did this, pretty much singularly Democrats, and I think that lends itself well to the overall conversation of they will do anything for power, and sadly, one doesn't want to think that way, but sadly that's the case. Mark in Washington, Indiana, WAOV. Thank you for the call. I appreciate that. Let us continue here in our speed round. Let's go to Nick, Chicago, Illinois, WLS. Go right ahead, Nick.
Yeah, thank you for taking my call. I love your
Pleasure.
show in a late evening like this. You have a nice, easy-going style, which has the intelligence yet without raising my blood pressure. So,
thank you, brother.
I called in to say that I see Trump winning this election for two reasons. Number one is more and more people are seeing how screwed up this liberal, progressive, or left-wing Democratic Party is. They're ruining the country. They don't seem to know it, and it's scary. And then the other thing is, I've been saying that we got to have more and more people checking the people who check the votes and the procedures and where votes, like mail-in votes, where they're stored. All these things, and that's being done aggressively more and more and more. So for those two reasons, I'm sure Trump will win. It'll be tight, but anyhow, I'm looking forward to it. And that's it. I thank you for taking my call. Bye.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Nick in Chicago, Illinois, WLS. And you bring up a good point. They have gotten more aggressive with the election integrity measures. Are we where we need to be? No. Are we way better than we used to be? Yes. And it's a shocker to the left, but not to me. The Gallup organization put a poll out today measuring the top 10 issues, whether they lean Republican or lean Democrat. And 9 of those 10 issues owned by Republicans. It's voter disgruntlement with Democrats and the Biden-Harris agenda, and the downward direction of America have given former President Trump and the Republicans a big edge in the election. In this poll, even liberal media outlets won't be able to ignore how Gallup said this morning, they just put this out, that of the top key issues that it's charting, 9 of them are winnable by Republicans. Republicans are underwater on one thing, approval of Congress, and voters don't like either party on that issue, and that doesn't surprise me. Who really likes Congress? I like the congressmen that we speak with, but as a whole, Congress doesn't do enough, and they cost a lot of money. Anyway, the political environment said, this is a quote from the poll, the political environment suggests the election is Trump's and Republicans to lose. That's according to Gallup. Nearly every indicator of the election context is favorable to the Republican Party, and those that aren't are essentially tied. rather than showing a Democrat advantage. This is what I see with my own eyes. I see the exact same thing. Republicans are winning on all the issues, and even when they're not winning, it's not because Democrats are winning and they're losing. It's because they're tied. I agree with that 100%. The analysis highlighted the trend against Democrats. The Gallup organization says that nearly all Gallup measures that have shown some relationship to past presidential election outcomes or that speak to current perceptions of the two major parties favor the Republican Party over the Democrat Party. So there you have that. More to come straight ahead. Your calls and more. 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We continue, amigos, with the speed round. Keep your comments to 1 or 2 sentences. Let's go to John in Moyi Springs, Idaho, KBFI. Go right ahead, John.
I'm calling because of Proposition 1 in Idaho is entirely not what it's meant to be. Voters need to get out and vote against these fraudulent passages that are made up of 18 pages of lies. So
well, we're going to research it and find out more about it. I don't know much about it to really get into a conversation about it, but I thank you for the call, and everybody needs to look out for that proposition in Idaho. Thank you, John, in Moyi Springs, Idaho. And let us continue. Let's go to Paul, Zanesville, Ohio. Go right ahead.
Yeah, Rich, I think it's going to come down to the undecided voter. That's what I think it's going to come down to. Because
I think you're right.
Do you want 4 more years? Yeah, do you want 4 more years of Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, Obama, or would you like to go back to the Trump era where we were prosperous?
You're right. And you know what it is? I think it always comes down to the undecided voters. I really do. And I think ultimately people here, listen, again, my Cuban friend who the last time I saw him, he was like, I'll never vote for Trump. You know what? I saw him on Sunday night, and you know what he told me? He said, bro, even I think I'm voting for Trump. This stuff is insane. What does that tell you? Paul, thanks for the call, brother. Shout out to WHIZ, Zanesville, Ohio. Let me see. With seconds to go, I don't think I'll be able to get Lance from Kalispell, Montana, or Michael from Pendleton, Oregon in, or my buddy Paul from Boise, Idaho. But I want to give a shout out to each of you. KBFI, KOFI, KUMA. Shout out to everybody west of the Mississippi. And maybe we'll talk about these tomorrow. What do we think the October surprise is going to be? China's definitely the biggest enemy we have. I agree with that. And Trump would likely end the war in Ukraine in a heartbeat. I'm with that, too. Hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night. And God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.